What's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to cover the basic CSS section of freeCodeCamp. If you didn't already complete the basic HTML and HTML5 section, I have a video on that you can check out. It's going to be part of this playlist. If you already have completed that and you want to do the basic CSS, let's go ahead and get right into it. We're just going to look at the introduction to basic CSS. Cascading style sheets, CSS, tells the browser how to display the text and other content that you write in HTML. Note that CSS is case sensitive, so be careful with your capitalization. CSS has been adopted by all major browsers and allows you to control color, fonts, positioning, spacing, sizing, decorations, and transitions. There are three main ways to apply CSS styling. You can apply inline styles directly to HTML elements with the style attribute. Alternatively, you can place CSS rules within the style tags in the HTML document. Finally, you can write CSS rules in an external style sheet, then reference that file in the HTML document. Even though the first two options have their use cases, most developers prefer external style sheets because they keep the styles separate from the HTML elements. This improves the readability and reusability of your code. The idea behind CSS is that you can use a selector to target an HTML element in the DOM, document object model, and then apply a variety of attributes to that element to change the way it is displayed on a page. In this section, you will see how adding CSS styles to the elements of your cat photo app can change it from simple text to something more. Note, some browser extensions may interfere with elements on the page. If the test fails, try disabling your extensions for the most reliable experience. Let's go to the first lesson. All right. Basic CSS, change the color of text. Now let's change the color of some text. You can do this by changing the style of your H2 element. The property that is responsible for the color of an element text is the color style property. Here is how you would set the H2 element's color to blue. H2, then you have style right here, then you have the attribute, and then you have the property that you want to give that attribute, which will be blue, and you put that right in the cat photo app H2 element. It's good practice to end inline style declarations with a semicolon. Change your H2 element style so that the color is red. All right, where is that? H2, so we're gonna do style, and then we're gonna go ahead and pass that in there like that, and then we're going to do color, and we're going to do, what did it say, red, and then we're going to close that off with a semicolon. Now you can see over here that now that is red. We're going to run the test, and yay, we did it. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, use CSS selectors to style elements. With CSS, there are hundreds of CSS properties that you can use to change the way an element looks on your page. When you entered the H2 style color red to the cat photo app H2, you were styling that individual H2 element with an inline CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. They already covered that in the introduction. There's one way to specify the style of an element, but there's a better way to apply CSS. At the top, create a style block like this. Inside your style block, you can create a CSS selector. For your H2 element, for example, if you wanted all H2 elements to be red, you would add a style rule that looked like this. So you define H2 elements on your page right here with the CSS selector of H2, and then in the curly brackets, you add the same way that you did it inline. You add color, colon, and red with the semicolon to close it off. Note, it's important to have both opening and closing curly braces around each element style rules. You also need to make sure that your element style definition is between the opening and closing style tags. Finally, be sure to add a semicolon at the end of your element style rules. All right, so delete the H2 style attribute and instead create a CSS style block and add the necessary CSS to turn all H2 elements blue. All right, so here at the very top, we're gonna have a new line. We're gonna do style. We're going to close this off. And then inside of this, we're going to break this, and then we're going to change this to H2. We want all the H2's color to be blue. We're going to do that, and then we're going to remove this one, because when you pass an inline style to an element, that is going to take precedence over passing in the style like this. So we're going to delete that, and now it should turn blue. There you go. Cat photo app H2 element is now blue. Let's run the test, and bam, there you go. Easy peasy. All right, let's use a CSS class to style an element. Classes are reusable styles that can be added to HTML elements. Here is an example of a CSS class declaration. All right, so inside your style block, you have a class name, and class names are usually highlighted with a dot in front. IDs are highlighted with a hash in front. So blue text is the class name, and inside of that class name, they're given the color blue. You can see that we've created a CSS class called blue text within the style tag. You can apply a class to an HTML element like this, H2 class blue text, and then apply that to the H2 element. Note that your CSS style element class names start with a period in your HTML elements class attribute. The class name does not include the period. So here it has a period inside your CSS styles. Here inside your class attribute on the actual element itself, it does not have a period. All right, so inside your style element, change the H2 selector to red text and update the colors value from blue to red. Give your H2 element a class attribute of red text. So then we're just gonna do this. This H2 is gonna be red.text. I forgot my period, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to the beginning of that. Dot red text. And then inside my H2, we're gonna give it a class. Class, and then we're going to do red hyphen text, and then now I got to change that to red. There you go. Now that's red again with the class and not a direct selector of the H2 element. Now it has a class, so we could apply this class to other elements and give it the red text as well. Hope you're able to follow along so far. Dang it, I forgot to donate. I swear I'm gonna donate after this video. I promise. Let me see. Okay, so again, if you're enjoying these videos, if you're finding them helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. Again, I'm gonna do a whole series on this and have this whole playlist go through the responsive web design section of freeCodeCamp. And I'm also going to complete the projects and all that. So if you're finding this useful, make sure to hit that like button. It'll help me out a lot. And if there's anything that I can do differently, if there's anything else that you want to see me do in these videos, let me know, and I'll do my best to try to make sure that I make everyone happy. So let's move on to the next one. Multiple elements with a CSS class. Classes allow you to use the same CSS styles on multiple HTML elements. You can see this by applying your red text class to the first P element. All right, so we're gonna do the red text class. I'm just gonna copy this right here, and then I am gonna add it to this P tag here, give it a space, and then now we have red text on that as well. So let's just run the test, and bada bing, bada boom, that's all done. All right, change the font size of an element. Font size is controlled by font size. CSS property like this, H1 font size 30 pixels. Inside the style tag that contains your red text class, create an entry for P elements to set the font size to 16 pixels. So right underneath this, we're going to create a new line. I like to give it a little extra space. I don't like them butt up against each other. So then we're going to do P, and then what did they want? 16 pixels. So font hyphen size colon 16 pixels. And now you can see that the P tags should have gone up in size. Let me see if that's gonna, okay, yep, so it did. So, and then 16 is what it wanted. I think it was already 16 pixels. It might have been the default size for it. But there you go, I added 16 pixels to that P tag. So set the font family of an element. So you can set which font an element should use by using font family property. For example, if you wanted to set your H2 element's font to sans serif, you would use the following CSS, H2 font family sans serif. Make your p tag elements use monospace. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just copy that so I don't have to type it. We're gonna add this to the p tag. So now we're gonna keep the same font size, and then underneath that we are gonna do font family, and then we're gonna paste monospace and leave that like that. And now you can see that the font is different on this p tag and every other p tag that's on this page. So we'll run that test. That should be easy peasy completed. Let's see, import a Google font. So now we're gonna actually import a font from Google. Google fonts are awesome, they're free, they're open source. I don't know if they're open source, but they're free, and they're supplied by Google, and they're actually really nice. They have a big library of fonts, and most people use them. They're web friendly, and Google approves of it. So if Google likes it, then you're gonna make Google happy, which, you know, will please all the Google gods and internet gods and everyone else that uses your website. So let's see, import a Google font. In addition to specifying common fonts that are found on most operating systems, we can also specify non-standard custom web fonts for use on our website. There are many sources for web fonts on the internet. For example, we will focus on the Google Fonts library. Google Fonts is a free library of web fonts that you can use in your CSS by referencing the font's URL. So let's go ahead and import it. All right, to import a Google font, you can copy the font's URL from the Google Font library and then paste it into your HTML. For this challenge, we'll import the Lobster font. To do this, copy the following code snippet and paste it into the top of your code editor. So now we're gonna be importing a link here. We're gonna copy this and we're gonna do it at the top here. So now we're importing that font, and then we should be able to just pass in the Lobster into the font family here. Now you can use a Lobster in your font CSS by using Lobster as the family name. In the following example, family name, generic name. The generic name is optional. It is a fallback just in case the other font specified is not available. This is covered in your next challenge. Family names are case sensitive and you need to be wrapped in quotes if there is a space in the name. For example, you will need to quote Open Sans font, but not to use the Lobster font, So import the Lobster font in your web page and then use an element selector to set Lobster on your H2. So we're gonna go ahead and do H2. Let me see, font family, and then we're gonna do Lobster here, and then bam, look at that fancy schmancy Lobster font. There we go. All right, on to the next challenge. So specify how fonts should degrade. There are several default fonts that are available in all browsers. These generic font families include monospace, serif, and sans serif. When one font isn't available, you can tell the browser to degrade to another font. For example, if you wanted an element to use the Helvetica, I hope I said that right, font, but to degrade to sans serif font when Helvetica isn't available, you will specify as follows. You have your font family here on the P tag. You say the font family that you want, and then your fallback here. So generic names are not case sensitive. Also, they do not need quotes because they are CSS keywords. To begin, apply the monospace font to the H2 element so that it now has two fonts, Lobster and monospace. In the last challenge, you imported the Lobster using the font link. Now comment out the import of Lobster font using the HTML fonts comments that you learned before. From Google Fonts, this isn't available anymore. Notice how your H2 element degrades to monospace. So what it wants us to do is give this monospace here. Oops, missed that one. Monospace there. And then we are going to comment out this. And if you remember how the comments go in HTML, it's going to be a less than, a bang, double hyphen, and then you got to close it out. And then you go hyphen, hyphen, greater than. And now that's commented out, and you can see that that lobster font on the H2 should have fallen back to monospace, which I think it did. Didn't it? Maybe. I think so. It should have. Oh, shoot. I see what I did. I was wondering. It was highlighting that this was, if you noticed that that wasn't the right color, the text editor was trying to tell me that it wasn't getting to this because I closed it off with the semicolon and I had to change that to a comma. So this was unreachable because I closed that off and it was actually causing an error. So I had to make that a comma. And now you can see that it's falling back to the cat photo app. And if you remember the shortcut for commenting out stuff, on Mac it's Command, on Windows it's Control and /. And then you can see like that, there we got our lobster, and now I commented again, and now we have our monospace as we should, and we're gonna run the test, and that should pass, and there it is. All right, moving on. Let's see. Size your images. CSS has a property called width that controls an element's width. Just like with fonts, we'll use pixels to specify an image's width. For example, if we wanted to create a CSS class called larger image that gave HTML elements a width of 500 pixels, we would use dot to signify that it's a class, larger hyphen image, and then pass in the width of 500 pixels. Create a class called smaller image and use it to resize the image so that it is only 100 pixels wide. All right, so we're gonna create a new class here. We're gonna go dot smaller, what was it? Image, and then colon, and then what did it say? 100 pixels, 100 px, and then close that with the semicolon. And oops, I forgot my curly brackets there. Sorry, I got to clean that up. I could leave it in line, but it's just better to clean this up and have it have the right layout. Look, and I forgot width also. I'm falling apart over here, people. I'm sorry. There we go. So that should work. Now we're going to copy this class name that we just gave it, and we're going to add it to, what was it? The image. Where is my image? All right, so here's the image source. We're going to do class. Oops, if I can spell class, and then paste that smaller image there, and that should be it. And let's run the test. Oh, 100 pixels. What did I miss? With smaller image. What did I miss? Used to resize the image so it's 100 pixels wide. I did width 100 pixels. And the image. I don't know what's wrong here. Image elements should have a class name smaller. Did I misspell something? All right, well, I'm glad this is happening because it could show that I'm making a mistake, but I'm not sure what the mistake is because I'm not sure here. Your image should be 100 pixels wide. So with 100 pixels, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, there it is. When I made the mistake earlier, I left that colon in there and I didn't realize that it was still there. I erased that and that should fix it. See, a lot of the times finding mistakes in code, especially when you don't have a linter set up, and this doesn't have a linter because it wants you to make mistakes and find your mistakes, which is good for learning, but when you have your text editor set up, a linter probably would have caught that. It's a lot of like, where's Waldo? You have to like find where you're missing something. And in that case, I wasn't missing something. I had something extra that was breaking it. So we should be able to run this, and there you go, it passed. All right, I was questioning myself. I thought I was going crazy for a second. So let's see, add borders around your elements. CSS borders have properties like style, color, and width. For example, if we wanted to create a red 5-pixel border around an HTML element, we could use this class, thin red border. Border color red, border width 5 pixels, border style solid. You can also do this all in line, and I'm sure they're gonna show you the shorthand after this example, which I hope they should. I think they will. They should cover that. Create a class called thick green border. This class should add a 10-pixel solid green border around an HTML element. Apply the class to your cat photo app. Remember that you can apply multiple classes to an element using its class attribute by separating each class name with a space. For example, class 1, and class 2. All right, so what did it want me to do? Create a class thick green border. I'm not going to type this out. I'm just going to copy that class name there that they want us to give it. We're going to add another one here, dot thick green border. I am not going to put a colon on it that time. And then what did it want? It wanted border color red, border width, what was it? Green here. I'm just going to copy this because I don't feel like typing all that. And it's okay to copy it because I know what it's doing and I don't need to type this a bunch of times to memorize it. We're just going to change the attributes. So then what was it? We want green. We want, what was it? 10 pixels. And we want it solid. All right, so that should be all we need for that. And then what are we putting this thick green border on? It should, and apply it to your cat photo. All right, where is my cat photo? So here we have smaller image. We're gonna add another class to that and give it a space, and then thick green border. And now you can see that our little kitty cats there have a thick green border around it, and that should pass. Oh, it didn't show you the shorthand. Interesting. I thought it would have shown the shorthand. I can show you the shorthand real quick. That shouldn't be too difficult to do. It might not like it, but here, I'll delete this real quick. And then you can see the border's gone on the kitty cats. And then you can do border. And then you can do 10px green and solid. And then that should give me the border back. So that's a shorthand way of doing all those extra classes that they put in there. You can do it all in line in one border attribute rather than passing in each individual attribute. I'm going to revert that back to what it was. Just wanted to show you that. I really thought that they would cover that. So add rounded corners with the border radius. Your cat photo currently has sharp corners. We want to round those corners out with the CSS property called border radius. You can specify a border radius with pixels. Give your cat photo app a border radius of 10 pixels. So we're going to do border radius, and then we're going to do 10 pixels, and that should do it. And now you can see we have nice little rounded corners, so we don't have those hard edges that nobody really likes. And I think we're kind of whizzing through this. Hopefully it's not taking too long here. Let's see. Alrighty, let's get on to the next one here. Make a circular image with a border radius. So we're going to be doing the same thing, but in this case, we want to make the image round. So we're going to give it a border radius of 50%. You can pass in percentages and you can also pass in pixels to border radiuses. And we're just going to change that to 50%. And now it should have a nice little round image there. Let's just go ahead and run that and see that that's passing. All right. Give a background color to a div element. You can set an element's background color with the background color property. For example, if you wanted an element's background color to be green, you'd put this within your style element. Background color green. Create a class called silver background with the background color of silver and assign it to your div element. All right, so they want us to create a silver background class, and we'll go ahead and break a new line there, paste silver background, curly brackets to open that up, and then we want to do background color. Oh, shoot. And then what was it? Silver. And then we'll close that off, and then silver background on our div. Where's our div? Right here. So we're going to do class. Keep doing the 2 A's rather than 2 S's at first, and then we're just going to pass that class in there, and there we go. Nice silver background we got there. All right, easy peasy. Let's go to the next one. All right, let's see what we got here. Set the element of an ID. In addition to classes, each HTML element can also have an ID attribute. There are several benefits of using ID attributes. You can use an ID to style a single element, and later you'll learn that you can use them to select and modify specific elements with JavaScript. ID attributes should be unique. Browsers won't enforce this, but it is widely agreed upon best practice. I believe I mentioned this in the HTML section, and they're covering it here. So So please do not give more than one element with the same ID attribute. And this is 100% true. It is best practice. You do not want to reuse IDs. Everything, an ID should be unique. You reuse classes. You don't reuse IDs on multiple elements. Here is an example of how you give an H2 element an ID of cat photo app. H2 ID cat photo app. Give your form element the ID cat photo form. So I'm going to just copy this. I don't want to type this stuff. There's no point in typing this stuff, but we're going to give our form. Where's our form? I can't find the form. Where the hell? Where the heck? Where the heck is the form? That's right. Keep it PG over here. So ID, double quotes, and cat photo form. That should do it. Easy peasy. See, it's really not that hard. I hate to downplay it because I know how hard it was, or I remember how hard it was, and now it's like super easy for me because I've been doing this stuff for like 4 years now. But when you're just starting and you're just learning this stuff is hard and it's complicated and you're trying to figure everything out. And I hope I'm not going too fast. If I'm going too fast, let me know. I have a tendency of talking really fast. I get nervous when I'm on camera and making these videos. And if I need to slow it down, I have to make a mental effort to do that. So I just naturally talk fast and I'm trying to zip through these to kind of keep them engaging and keep it moving along. So just give me some feedback. Let me know in the comments how I'm doing. I really want to know because this is only the second video of a fairly long series, or what will be a fairly long series. So I want to know how I'm doing and I want to make sure that I can improve these videos so when I continue to do these, people will like them and keep watching them and find them helpful. So what's the next one? Let's see. Use an ID attribute to style an element. One cool thing about ID attributes is that, like classes, you can style them using CSS. However, an ID is not reusable and should only be applied to one element. See, they're really enforcing that. They want you to know that that's the rule and you shouldn't break that rule. An ID also has a higher specificity importance than a class. So if both are applied to the same element and have conflicting styles, the styles of the ID will be applied. I don't know if they're going to get into the levels of specificity here, and that's a good thing to kind of learn about. So if you're following along with this, make a note to yourself to learn about the specificity of HTML elements and what's going to take precedence over different styles when something is using the same, when something is styling the same element using different attributes such as ID and class. And it's a good thing to know. I don't remember it all. It's something that I would have to Google, but I do know that ID takes precedence over class. So that's just a good FYI, homework if you want to go and do that. All right, here's an example how you can take your element with the ID attribute of cat photo element and give it a background color of green in your style. Remember how I mentioned earlier, classes have dots or periods at the beginning and IDs have hashes. Well, here you go. There's a hash that represents ID there. So cat photo element, background color green. And then note that inside your style element, you always reference your classes by putting a period in the front of the names and always reference IDs by putting a hash. Well, they're covering it. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So try giving your form, which has an ID attribute of cat photo at a green background. So where is that cat photo app ID here? Okay, we gave it the ID already, so we're gonna do hash, what is it, cat photo app, and then the brackets, and then what does it want? A background of green? Is that? Oh, I could have just copied that. I should have just copied that, but we'll type it out. Yes. One thing that you're going to learn, and you're going to probably hear as you continue learning how to code, is that programmers and developers are super lazy. It's a compliment. It's not a bad thing. We just don't like to have to do things, over and over. And if I can copy something, I'm going to copy it because it'll just be quicker. Does it not have the ID on the form? Let me see. Give it your form that now has the ID. Okay. Oh, it's cat photo form. Copy. I was like, why did it not change the color there? So I put cat photo app. Where the heck are we? There we go. So change that to form. And there we go. So that looks hideous. But there you go. It changed the colors there. And we've got 34%. Not bad. All right. Let's see. Adjust the padding of an element. Now let's put our cat photo app away for a little while and learn more about styling HTML. You may have already noticed this, but all HTML elements are essentially little rectangles. It's called the box model. Research it on your own time. It's a common question that they ask a lot of front-end developers and UI developers in interviews. I was asked it like 3 times when I interviewed, and the first time it caught me off guard, and by the third time I had, gone back and made sure that I didn't get caught off guard again, that I sounded like an expert, and I really didn't know. I just enough interviews and I had practice and got the same question multiple times that I made sure that I knew the box model. So that's something that it's good to know. And all boxes consist of padding, border, and margin. That is going to be the answer to that question if you ever come across that. So an element's padding controls the amount of space between an element's content and its border. Here we can see that the blue box and the red box are nested within the yellow box. Everything inside of HTML is a box. Remember that. That's good information to know. Let's see. Here you can see that the blue box and the red box are nested within the yellow box. Note that the red box has more padding than the blue box. When you increase the blue box's padding, it will increase the distance padding between the text and the border around it. Change the padding of your blue box to match that of your red box. So where's my blue box? All right, so here's red box, blue box. So they want to make the blue box to match your red, so we want to make this blue box 20. And there you go, now they're the same. All right, that should be it. Quick and easy. All right, adjust the margin of an element. When I was first learning HTML and CSS, margin and padding was very confusing for me. It still kind of is. So if you get confused by margin and padding, you're not alone. It's normal. Just keep working on it. Eventually you'll figure out what the difference is. You'll push enough pixels around and you'll move things around enough times on a screen that you'll know when you need to use margin versus padding. So let's see. Margin controls the amount of space between an element's border surrounding elements. Here we can see that the blue box and the red box are nested within the yellow box. Note that the red box has a bigger margin than the blue box, making it appear smaller. When you increase the blue box's margin, it will increase the distance between its border and surrounding elements. Change the margin of the blue box to match that of the red box. All right, this is not too hard again. So we want the blue box to have the same margin as the red box. So we're going to change this from 10 to 20. And now you can see that they look the same. And we'll run our test and that should pass. All right, moving through this, almost halfway done. Let's see. Add a negative margin to an element. An element's margin controls the amount of space between an element's border and surrounding elements. If you set an element's margin to negative values, the element will grow larger. Try to set the margin to a negative value like the one of the red box. Change the margin of the blue box to negative 15 so that it fills the entire horizontal width of the yellow box around it. All right, negative 15, where's that? Where's that blue box? All right, so we're gonna change this to negative 15 right here, negative 15, boom. Now that should pass. All right, add different padding to each side of an element. Sometimes you will want to customize an element so that it has different amounts of padding on each of its sides. CSS allows you to control the padding of all 4 individual sides of an element with the top padding, or padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left properties. Give the blue box a padding of 40 on its top and left side, but only 20 on its bottom and right side. All right, so what was it? That confused me. So top and left is 40. Oh, where is it? Which one they want? The blue box? Oh, so, okay, so I'm gonna copy this. I'm sorry, I'm just not gonna type all that for nothing. There's no need to type that stuff because you're literally gonna be using the same exact attributes. Although I don't know if that's what it wanted. Let's see, top and left 40. Top and left 40, and then 20 on the bottom and the right. Okay, so they want it the same as the red. So there you go. There's that. That should work. And as you see, I just copied it. You can type this stuff out if you feel like you want to get the muscle memory of typing these, you know, attributes and styles, but you don't need to memorize stuff. If you do this enough, you'll learn how to do it without memorizing. Honestly, just like border, there is shorthand for padding that you don't have to write every individual, you know, padding top, padding right, padding bottom, or padding left. You can do it all in one line. Maybe I'll show you in this one if it doesn't cover it. I really thought they would cover something like that, but I want to stick to the curriculum, and I don't want to diverge too far off and keep showing you all the little shortcut stuff because I don't want it to confuse you. And if that stuff is confusing and you want me to stick to the curriculum, let me know. I can show you the different ways of doing the padding and the margin and whatnot in shorthand and show those little tips and tricks, but I just don't know if it's gonna, you know, just add confusion to something that's already kind of confusing for beginners. And if you're doing this, you're probably a beginner, and I don't want to make this any harder than it has to be. So let's continue. Add different margins to each side of an element. Sometimes you will want to customize an element so that it has a different margin on each of its sides. Just like they did with padding, they're covering margin now. CSS allows you to control margin with all 4 individual sides of an element. With the margin top, right, bottom, and left properties. Give the blue box a margin of 40 on its top and left side, but only 20 on its bottom and right. All right, so maybe I'll do the shorthand just to show you. So I'm going to do the shorthand just to show you. So with the shorthand, it goes in that same order. So it's top, right, bottom, left. So if it wants top to be 40, we'll do 40. And then what? It wants right to be 20. And then it wants bottom to be 40. Is that right? No. It wants bottom to be 20. Bottom to be 20. And then the left to be 40. And then that should do it. See, now it looks the same as the other one. I don't know if this is going to pass me because their testing might actually be testing for these individual ones, but I don't know if they can actually test that because they're probably just checking to see if those elements are correct. So let's see. Hey, it works. See, there you go. That's the shorthand version. I said I wasn't going to do it because I didn't want to confuse you. Again, you can apply each individual attribute and style how it showed you with those. And you can do the shorthand version like this. I hope it didn't confuse you. If it did, just go back to the padding section and do it how I did it in the padding section, but just do it with margin. So let's go ahead and continue there. Use clockwise notation. Well, I just covered this in the shorthand. See, I shouldn't get ahead of myself, and maybe I'll stop doing that. Use clockwise notation to specify a padding of an element. Instead of specifying an element's padding, top, right, bottom, left, padding properties individual, you can specify them all in one line like this, just like I did with the margin a second ago. And forgive me if I'm mixing words like properties and attributes and styles all together. I kind of tend to forget what the exact, names for each one of those things are. So I'm sorry if that adds more confusion. I really don't want to confuse you guys. So I apologize if I'm confusing the hell out of you right now. And and you're just like, this guy is just too much. So, and if I am, let me know. All right, so use clockwise notation to give the blue box a padding class of 40 on its top and its left side, but only 20 on its bottom and its right. So here you go. It's doing it right here for that element. So we're just going to copy that and we're going to add that right there. And that's all we got to do for this one. Hey, oh. See, I got too cocky. All right, so what does it want? It wants padding on its top and its left. Oh, that. So then we're going to do padding on the top. So that's going to be 40, and this is going to be on the right. It wants 20, and then on the bottom, top, and the bottom 20, and the right. Okay, so that should do it. There you go. Okay. See, I copy and pasting stuff and not really looking at what it's doing. That'll get you in trouble. So if you copy and paste stuff, make sure you know what it's doing. Don't do like I just did. All right, use clockwise notation to specify a margin of an element. Same thing, but we're gonna just do this with margin now. So we wanna use the clockwise notation to give the element of the blue box a margin. So here, let's start this from scratch here. I won't copy anything. Margin, and then what does it want? It wants the top and the left to be 40. So top is 40, And then we're going to do right is 20, bottom is 20, and then the left is 40, and that should do it. There we go. Halfway there. All right. I feel like this one's longer than the HTML one. I'm really trying to like zip through these to try to keep them under an hour because I want them to be digestible and hopefully help people that are stuck or anyone that kind of wants to follow freeCodeCamp more like a tutorial. Even though I tell you to stay out of tutorial hell, who knows? Sometimes people need this stuff to help them through certain things. So hopefully it helps. Let's see. Use attribute selectors to style elements. All right, you have been adding ID or class attributes to the elements that you wish to specify style, specifically style. All right, these are known as ID and class selectors. There are other CSS selectors that you can use to select custom groups of elements to style. Let's bring out our cat photo app again to practice using CSS selectors. All right, for this challenge, you will use the attribute style or the attribute equal value attribute selector to style the checkboxes in the cat photo app. This selector matches style elements with a specific attribute value. For example, the below code changes the margin of all elements with the attribute type and corresponding value of radio. So type radio. So this is going to target all the radio buttons. Using the type attribute selector, try to give the checkboxes in cat photo app a top margin of 10 pixels and a bottom margin of 15. So I'm going to go ahead and add it at the bottom here. And this is something I don't really use that often. Honestly, this would probably be something that I would end up having to Google because I really don't use this that often. But let's do this checkbox. And then what are we going to do? We're going to give it, what was it? Margin top. Where is it? Margin. What is it? Top 10 pixels, and then bottom, so 15, and then you can see here I'm passing in zeros for the inline stuff. So I could have done this like this. I could have done margin top. What was it? 15. Oh shoot, margin top 10, and then I could have done margin bottom 15. I cannot type. I am sorry. Oh, goodness. Oh, geez. Either of these would work. There's probably additional shorthand that I could probably omit these zeros, but then that gets confusing for me when you do like the shorthand stuff, and I often have to Google that stuff. So you can do this either way. Either one of these will work. Just for simplicity's sake, we'll just do it like this, top 10 and bottom 15, and there you go. So on to the next challenge. Oh, my eyes are burning, sorry. All right, understand absolute versus relative units. The last several challenges have set an element's margin or padding with pixels. Pixels are a type of length unit, which is what tells the browser how to size or space an item. In addition to pixels, CSS has a number of different length unit options that you can use. The two main types of length units are absolute and relative. Absolute units tie to physical units of length. For example, inch and millimeter refer to inches and millimeters respectively. Absolute length units approximate the actual measurement of a screen, but there are some differences depending on the screen's resolution. Relative units such as M or rem are relative to another length value. So for example, M is the base of the size of an element's font. If you want to use the font size property itself, it's relative to its parent font size. There are several relative unit options that you can tie to the size of a viewport. They are covered in the responsive web design principles section. Add padding and property to an element with the class red box and set it to 1.5 M. I'm not going to get into that. This is going to be covered in the responsive web design principles section. It's probably going to be extremely confusing if you're doing basic CSS right now to get into how the differences between M and rem, and I'm not going to open that can of worms right now. So to keep this simple, I'm just going to do what this says, and let's add the padding property to the element of box red with 1.5 M. Where is that box red, or red box right here? Red box. And then what was it? Padding, is that what we're doing? Padding. And then we're going to do 1.5 M. And there's that, and that should do it. And let's go on to the next one. Now let's start fresh. All right, what's it say? All right, style the HTML body element. Let's start fresh. Every HTML page has a body element. We can provide the body element. We can prove that the body element exists by giving it a background color of black. We can do this by adding the following styles here. So I'm just gonna copy this because I remember when I was doing this stuff and I would feel like, oh, if I copy this stuff, I'm just not gonna know it. I need to type everything out so I can know it. You can, if it makes you feel like you're gonna learn a little bit more by typing it out. I get it. You're seeing me copy it and you're like, why is this guy copying it? Why doesn't he just type it? It's because you've already seen I'm terrible at typing, and I'm passing the challenge by doing what it says. If you feel like you need to get some muscle memory and type that stuff out, by all means do it, but that was just an easy way of completing that challenge and showing you how to do that. And you can see now that this is black as black can be. So let's see, inherit styles from the body element. Now we've proven that every HTML page has a body element, and that its body element can also be styled with CSS. Remember that you can style your body element just like any other HTML element, and all your other elements will inherit your body's element styles. First, create an H1 element with the text hello world. So let's do H1 hello world. Does it want me to capitalize it? I don't know if it's gonna ding me if I don't capitalize it. So let's just capitalize it. Hello world. And then let's give the element on your page a color of green by adding color green to your body's declaration. All right, so body here, we're gonna do color, which color targets font color, which it can be confusing. It's not like font hyphen color, it is color, and then we're gonna make it green, and then all the elements that are inside of that body that are a font will have that inheritance from the body styles. So there you have it. Hello world is a nice green right there. And then finally give your body element a font family of monospace by adding font family monospace. So we'll type this one out because I feel like I'm just copy and pasting, and I feel like it might be confusing you guys if I just copy and paste stuff. But you could just copy and paste that line that they have here because it's there, and like, why not? But I get it. I get it. Here we go. So now we got monospace there. I typed it all out for you to be able to see, and then I had like a little delay. I was like, oh, what did I break, or what did I not complete? Prioritize one style over another. Sometimes your HTML elements will receive multiple styles that conflict with one another. For example, your H1 element can be both green and pink at the same time. Let's see what happens when we create a class that makes text pink and then apply it to an element. Will our class override the body element's green color CSS property? Let's find out. All right, create a class called pink text and give it a class on your, all right, so what we're doing is we're gonna do, all right, we're gonna do pink text. Is that the class that they wanted? Pink text, and then we're gonna pass this class here. We're gonna copy that, and then we're gonna do color. What is it? Pink, and then we're gonna give this a class here. Class. Hey, I typed class this time without failing there. Hey, look at that. So the class is gonna override the body style because it's a level of specificity that is greater than what's being inherited from the body, like they covered earlier with specificity and what takes precedence over another's styles, and that's beyond the level of basic CSS, but they are like getting your toes wet a little bit with that. So there you go. All right, on to the next one. Override styles with your subsequent CSS. Our pink text class overrode our body elements CSS declaration. We just proved that our classes will override the body's elements CSS. So next logical question is, what can we do to override our pink text class? All right, create an additional CSS class called blue text and give it an element the color blue. Make sure it's below your pink text. This is why it's cascading style sheets, because it goes down the list. That's why they named it that. All right, here we go. Add multiple class attributes to the HTML element is done with space between like this. So class one, they mentioned that earlier. It doesn't matter which order the classes are listed in your HTML elements. However, the order of the class declarations in your style section is what is important. The second declaration will always take precedence over the first because blue text is declared second. It overrides the attributes of pink text. Cascading style sheets. This used to kill me when I was new and I was styling stuff on my own, and I remember getting stuck on my own personal projects so many times because I would run into this problem and I couldn't figure it out, and they're covering it here. So hopefully by me putting some emphasis on this, you will remember this if you run into this issue when you're building your own projects and you don't know why something has a class that should be applying a certain style and it's not, because I just remember how much trouble I had with that. It's so funny because that just like took me back to like 4 years ago, and I'm sure I probably had that issue since then, but I remember when I was first learning it was very complicated. And if you didn't see what I did, I just followed what they said here. I added a new blue excuse me, let me just close this so you can see. So I added blue text styles or class here in the styles, and I gave it a color of blue, and then I added it here. Again, it doesn't matter if I would have put this in front of pink like they said. All that matters is where it's declared in the style sheet. It will still take precedence over the pink text because it's afterwards. If I were to move this up, and I'm using my shortcuts there, you can see pink is now going to win. So blue there, and then we'll just run the test again and complete that. We're getting pretty close to the end here, so let's try to get through this. All right, override class declarations by styling ID attributes. We proved that browsers read CSS from top to bottom in order of their declaration. That means that in the event of a conflict, the browser will use whichever CSS is declared, a declaration came last. Notice that if we even had put blue text before pink text in our H1 elements classes, it would still look at the declaration order and not the order of its use. But we're not done yet. There are other ways that you can override CSS. Do you remember ID attributes? Let's override pink text and blue text classes and make your H1 element orange by giving the H1 element an ID and styling that ID. Give your H1 element an ID attribute of orange text. Remember that IDs look like this. ID equals double quotes orange text. Leave the blue text and the pink text classes on your H1 element. Create a CSS declaration of orange text ID in your style element, and here's an example of what it should look like. They're giving you a little example here. You could just swap out brown for orange and you could pass this, but you would still have to give it an ID here. So let's give the H1 an ID of orange, you glad I didn't say banana, orange text. And then we're gonna go here and I'm gonna put it at the top because it's cascading, and if it was a class, then blue text would win. But since it's an ID, it doesn't care. It's gonna win because IDs trump classes when it comes to specificity. So text, and then we're gonna do color and do orange, and then that should win. Boom, orange. There we go. All right, we're getting a little bit closer here. This one does feel a lot longer than the HTML one was, but it's jam-packed with so much good information, and I feel like I'm adding tidbits to it. And if that's stuff you don't want to hear, let me know. And like, subscribe, you know, all that good stuff. It'll help me out with the YouTube algorithm. It'll help out my channel to get people engaging on these videos. So please, you know, make sure to share these if you want to share them, or whatever you want to do. If you don't want to do any of that stuff, that's fine too. I just hope that you're getting value from this. All right, override class declarations with inline styles. There you go. Inline styles are gonna trump class declarations. So we've proven that ID declarations override class declarations regardless of where they are declared in your style element CSS. There are other ways that you can override CSS. Do you remember inline styles? Use an inline style to try to make our H1 element white. Remember, inline styles look like this. Style, color, green. Leave the blue text and the pink text classes on your H1. So it wants us to just, right here, style, and then what it wants it to be white, and then I forgot color, because we need to tell it what style there. And although it does take this, it is best practice to add that colon there, and that should do it. So inline styles will beat IDs and classes. So remember that. If you have inline styles on something, it's gonna win. And again, that's stuff that I used to run into when I first started, and it used to get me stuck because I would do that. And you don't really want to use inline styles. It's really not the best way to go about styling things. It's better to use classes for the most part. You style stuff with classes almost always. You can use IDs, you can use inline styles, but for the most part, you use classes. And also, if you want to get good at naming conventions for CSS, check out BEM. It's block element modifier. It's probably the best naming convention for naming your CSS classes and your HTML classes. And I'm not going to get into any more than that, but little homework for you if you want to learn a little bit about BEM, B-E-M, block element modifier. Just look it up. All right, so override all other styles by using important. Yay, we just proved that inline styles will override all CSS declarations in your style element. But wait, there's one last way to override CSS. This is the most powerful method of all. But before we do it, let's talk about why you would ever want to override CSS. In many situations, you will use CSS libraries. These may accidentally override your own CSS. So when you absolutely need to make sure that an element has specific CSS, you can use important. Let's go all the way back to our pink text declaration. Remember that pink text class was overridden by subsequent class declarations, ID declarations, and inline styles. Let's add the keyword important to your pink text elements color declaration, making 100% sure that the H1 element will be pink. An example of how to do this would be color red, exclamation mark important. I'm not even going to get into why you should be very careful using importance. It's beyond the scope of this, and I'm not going to open up that can of worms. But just use importance carefully. If you work in a big code base and you're using importance all over the place to override styles, it's code smell. And if you don't know what code smell is, it's a sign of bad code. You don't want to use importance all the time. You only really want to use them when you absolutely have to. But if you're in a code base that has a lot of CSS and they just override stuff left and right with important, just run for the hills or see if they'll let you refactor it. But I wouldn't want to take on that task. I'm not going to get into that. But be careful using important. It's very powerful, and it can lead to a lot of headaches if you're in a big code base and you're using it all over the place. That's all I'm going to say. All right, use hex code for specific colors. All right, here we go. Did you know that there are other ways to represent colors in CSS? One of these ways is called hexadecimal code, or hex code for short. We usually use decimals or base 10 numbers, which use the symbols 0 to 9 for each digit. Hexadecimals, or hex, are base 16 numbers. This means that they use 16 distinct symbols, like decimal symbols of 0 through 9 represent the values of 0 to 9, then A, B, C, D, E, F represent the values of 10 to 15. Altogether, 0 to F can represent a digit in hexadecimal, giving us 16 total possible values. You can find more information about this on hexadecimal numbers here. Yeah, you can go read that if you want. it might just confuse you. It's not something that you need to like absolutely know. You just kind of need to learn how to pass in colors with hex values, and that's probably as far as you need to go with that, unless you want to like geek out and really like learn about that stuff. But it's not something that you're gonna be quizzed on, you know, of like you might be asked what's a hexadecimal and how you use it for colors, but the science of hexadecimal numbers is probably not something that you're going to be asked in an interview. You'll probably be asked to apply colors using them. So in CSS, we can use 6 hexadecimal digits to represent colors, 2 for the red, 2 for green, and 2 for blue components. For example, 0000000 is black, and also the lowest possible value. You can find more information on the RGB color system here. Now, the RGB color system, that might be something you want to look at if you want to see like how you can modify these colors here. So replace the black in our bodies element with the hex code. So easy peasy, instead of saying black here, we're going to do a hex value. So then we're just going to do 00. This is shorthand, so you could do 3 zeros, because if you did this, and you can do it with white too and other values too, you can do it like that. But we'll just do the 6 of them here to not confuse anyone else and not do any more shorthand, because I feel like I'm confusing you guys. And I'm also trying to stay away from my keyboard shortcuts, because I know a couple people mentioned that they like that in the last video, but I also just don't want to confuse beginners. So I'm just trying to make everyone happy here. All right, so let's use a hex code to mix colors. To review hex codes, use 6 hexadecimal values, or 6 hexadecimal digits to represent colors, each of red, green, blue components. For these 3 pure colors, red, green, and blue, we can vary the amount of each to create over 16 million other colors. For example, orange is pure red mixed with some green and no blue. In hex code, it translates to this. Yeah, that's orange. The digit 0 is the lowest number in the hex value, and it represents the complete absence of color. The digit F is the highest in the hex value, and it represents the maximum possible brightness. That's why the 3 Fs or the 6 Fs is white, because it's the highest possible brightness. So here's a few examples, and replace the color words in our style elements with the correct hex values. So, all right, so let's see. We'll start with Dodger blue here. I should have copied the hex, but I'll just add it here. Dodger blue, so hex. Oh, that's an at sign. We're just gonna do that there. Dodger blue. Green is gonna be this one, so copy that. Just paste that there, and then orange is gonna be this one. Copy that. Where's orange? And then red is gonna be this one. And red. Beautiful. Look at those colors, so vibrant. All right, and that should do it. Look at that. We're almost there, people. We're getting there. We're doing it. All right, use abbreviated hex codes. I mentioned that earlier. I really need to stop trying to get ahead of myself here. Many people feel overwhelmed by the possibilities of more than 16 million colors. It's difficult to remember hex code. Fortunately, you can shorten it. For example, red hex code is F0000. You can be shortened to F00. This shorthanded form gives 1 digit for red, 1 digit for green, and 1 digit for blue. This reduces the total number of possible colors around 4,000, but browsers will interpret FF0000 and F00 as exactly the same color. So now let's use the shorthand versions. So copy. And where is this here? Fuchsia. Fuchsia. That's a fun color to say, isn't it? Fuchsia. There you go. Shorthand. Beautiful. All right. We're moving and we're grooving. We're almost done. Geez, that red is bright. I just looked at that and I feel blinded. So use RGB values to color elements. Another way that you can represent colors in CSS by using RGB values. RGB values for black look like this. RGB You got your opening and closing parens, and then 0, comma, 0, and then the last one there. RGB values for white look like this. So 0 to 255. Those are your min and your max numbers that you can go. Instead of using 6 hexadecimal digits like you do with hex code RGB, you specify the brightness of each color with a number between 0 and 255. If you do the math, the 2 digits for one color equals 16 times 16, which gives us 256 total values. So RGB, which starts counting from 0, has the exact same number of possible values as hex code. Alright, here's an example of how you change the body's background to orange using its RGB code. So, background color, RGB, open and closing parens, or open parens and the numbers and then the closing parens. Let's replace the hex color of our body element background to be RGB black. So I'll just type it out just for funsies. RGB, we're gonna do the parens and then what was black. So it's 0, 0, and then 0, boom. Black, nice and dark. All right, dark like my soul. Just kidding. I'm not emo, but I could be. Sorry, it's late. I'm getting a little delirious and I'm trying to make this entertaining. So let's see, basic CSS. Use RGB to mix colors. Just like with hex code, you can mix colors in RGB by using combinations of different values. Replace your hex codes in our style elements with the correct RGB value. All right, so let's just swap these out here. So blue, just like we did with the hex values earlier, I'm just gonna swap these out nice and quickly, easy peasy. No need to go crazy here. We'll just dump these in here. And then sienna. Yeah, these are fun colors. Colors I've never really heard of. All right, look at that. We're almost done, everybody. All right, let's see. Use CSS variables to change several elements at once. CSS variables are a powerful way to change many CSS properties at once by changing only one value. Follow instructions below to see how changing just 3 values can change the styling of many elements. The penguin classes change the black to gray and the gray value to white and the yellow to orange. So we're gonna do is it white and then yellow to orange. What's that? Orange. There you go, and that should pass. Now, CSS preprocessors like Sass and Less have variables. These variables that they're mentioning here are the native CSS variables. I suggest using variables if you're writing just vanilla CSS and you're not using a preprocessor. Use variables. It'll make your life way easy, and naming conventions for variables, that's something you might have to learn, but it's good to use variables because it just makes your code very reusable and makes it a lot easier to change stuff out when you need to. So let's see here. Create a custom CSS variable. To create a CSS variable, you just need to give it a name with 2 hyphens in front of it and assign it a value like this. Penguin skin gray, and it will create a variable named penguin skin and assign the value of gray. Now you can use the variable elsewhere in your CSS to change the value of other elements. In the penguin class, create a variable named penguin skin and give it a value of gray. So let's see. So it's, what is it? It's penguin skin, and then what is it? Is it gray? In the penguin class, create a variable named penguin skin, and then is that it? Yeah, that was it. All right, I wasn't really looking at the right hand side of the screen, so I didn't really notice if anything changed. I was just looking at the challenge and just doing that. So after you create a variable, so to use custom CSS variables, after you create your variable, you can assign its value to other CSS properties by referencing the name you give it. Background var penguin skin. It will change the background to whatever element you are targeting to gray because of the value of penguin skin. Note that the styles will not be applied unless the variable names are exact match. Apply penguin skin variable to the background property of the penguin top, bottom, and right hand classes. So let's just copy penguin skin here. So we just do, is that it? Oh, easy peasy. I thought it was telling me where to do it. Oh, I missed one. Ah! Hey, we lost a penguin. Oh, shoot. I need to do var. Duh. Sorry. So then we got to do var. That's what we want to do. So I'm just going to copy that. So that's how you want to do it. Just like the example here, I applied penguin skin directly without the variable naming. So I'm just going to swap those out real quick. Now we have a gray penguin. And then that should do it. Alrighty. Look at that. We're almost there. 89%. So close. All right. Attach a fallback value to your CSS variable. When using variables in CSS property, you can attach a fallback value to your browser that your browser will revert to if given the variable is invalid. Note, the fallback is not used to increase browser capability and will not work on IE. Nothing works on IE. I don't even know why people still support it, because they have to, and hopefully IE will die soon enough as you know, Microsoft just moved over to Chromium base and just lets IE, you know, RIP. All right, so here's how we do that. We have the fallback is here, so you have your variable. You declare it as a variable, you pass in the variable name, and then you have your fallback here. So it looks like there's a problem with the variable supplied a penguin top and penguin bottom class. Rather than fix the typo, add a fallback of black. So what is this? Black, and then what is it? Is it this one? So black, and then let's see. There you go. Easy peasy. Just add the fallback there. All right, let's see. Improve compatibility with browser fallbacks. When working with CSS, you will likely run into browser compatibility issues at some point. This is why it's important to provide browser fallbacks to avoid potential problems. When your browser parses CSS of a web page, it ignores any properties that it doesn't recognize or support. For example, if you use a CSS variable to assign a background color on a site, Internet Explorer, IE, will ignore the background color because it does not support CSS variables. In that case, the browser will use whatever value is that property has for that property. If it can't find any other value set for that property, it will revert to the default value, which is typically not ideal. This means that if you do not want to provide a browser fallback, it is easy as providing another value and support immediate fallback declaration. When older browsers will have something to fall back on, while newer browsers will just interpret whatever declaration comes later in the cascade. It looks like a variable is being used to set the background color of the red box class. Let's improve our browser capability by adding another background declaration right before the existing declaration to set the value to red. So we're just going to do here, and we're going to do background, and then we're going to do red and close that off, and then that should do it. All right. Getting closer and closer. Inherit CSS values. When you create a variable, it is available for you to use inside the selector in which you create it. It also is available in any other selector descendants. It happens because CSS variables are inherited just like ordinary properties. You must to make use of inheritance, CSS variables are often defined by the root element. Root is a pseudo class selector that matches the root element of a document, usually the HTML element. By creating your variable in root, they will be available globally and can be accessed from any other selector on the style sheet. Define a variable named penguin belly in the root selector and give it a value of pink. So let's just give it penguin belly. We're gonna pass that in there, and then we're just gonna say pink, and then we're gonna close that off, and that's bright. That's very, very pink. All right, this might be the last one. Let's see. Change a variable from a specific area. When you create your variable in root, they will set the value of the variable for the whole page. You can then overwrite those variables by setting them again within a specific element. Change the value of penguin belly to white in the penguin class. So change the value of penguin belly to white in the penguin class. Okay, so it's saying that you can, okay, so basically we're gonna redefine the variable inside of this class and not use the global variable. We're just gonna name it in here, and we're gonna change it to white there. It's got too many semicolons there, and there we go, that should do it. All right, ooh, 98, looks like we got one left. All right, let's see. Use a media query to change a variable. CSS variables can simplify the way that you use media queries. For instance, when your screen is smaller or larger than your media query breakpoint, you can change the value of a variable. It will apply its styles wherever it's used. In the root selector of the media query, change it to so that penguin size is redefined and given a value of 200 pixels. Also, redefine penguin skin to give it a value of black. Then resize the preview to see the change in action. So change, so we're just gonna, what is it, penguin size? It's to 200, is that it? Also redefine penguin skin to black, so. Now it wants us to resize this. So. Hey, you see how it changed there with the resizing of the screen? So when the width is 350 pixels, it changes it to black. Pretty cool, huh? Media queries are cool, and I'm sure they're gonna get into that. That's beyond basic CSS, but that should be it. I think we just finished. There you go, 100% complete. So that right there, folks, is the basic CSS section of freeCodeCamp. Again, these videos, I'm going to be working through all the curriculum that I can. I'm going to start off with the responsive web design curriculum and work through all of the sections and stuff that they have there, all the way down to the projects. This is the beginning of a very long series of videos that I plan on doing. So please, your feedback is much appreciated. If there's any way that I can improve these videos, if there's any way that I can make this a better experience for my viewers, let me know. I want to make these as good as possible because, you know, there's going to be a bunch of these videos, and this is just the beginning, and I want to make sure that they're helpful and that they're valuable and they teach you something. So with all that said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of these videos, or if you want to see any videos on me talking about learning how to code and becoming a web developer and a self-taught programmer. With all that said, thanks for watching. I really appreciate everyone, and I'll see you next time.